Hey folks and welcome, Sam Green here. Today we are going to do a real quick demonstration. It takes about 16 minutes to do this demo. It's a value study, so I am just going to be using a black. Today here I have a Williamsburg Cold Black, and I'm going to use titanium white. So let's not waste any time. Let's take a look at the image and we'll dive right into the demo. All right, folks, let's take a look at the image that I'm going to be working from today. This is an image I actually took while I was out painting, but wanted to just snap a quick photo of it. I think this was even a still taken from a video, so it's a little bit blurry, which is not a problem for this project here today. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to crop it a little bit. There's a lot happening on that left-hand side that I'm actually not as interested in, so I'm going to just crop it just like that. Again, as you can see, it's pretty blurry, so you can't make out a lot of the details, which I actually think is quite helpful. Now, this particular painting is going to be done just in black and white, so this is just a value study. So this is kind of fun for that because I think there's some pretty interesting and really rather simple value shifts. The white of the snow, sort of the dark of the trees, and sort of the mid-tone and the sky as well all have different values to them. What do I want to avoid right out of the gate? I can tell you is that I want to avoid this sort of striping feel of everything, and I don't want everything to just all be horizontal. I want to have some other sort of more vertical and diagonal lines in there to create some space. And I'll show you how I intend to do that. I think this fence shape right here is really interesting, the way that leads into this sort of other fence line and tree line here with a few of these posts, a few of these bushes. I think there's sort of some interesting things happening in there. And I'll tell you why that's interesting is because I think that what that is able to allow me to do is I can use that to create a space here, create another space back here, and then I love this little peekaboo moment back here where you can start to see through some of the trees, and then obviously this space back here in the mountains, and then the sky. So you can sort of go from one space to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other. So you can keep moving back in space really nicely when you're really able to bring in this line and this space in here and sort of break up the ground. I think that's kind of the biggest, most important thing I noticed when looking at this image, and certainly when I was on site, one of the things that was really apparent in real life. I think that I'm not going to get too bogged down with details. It's going to be a very fast painting. So I'm going to be as direct as I can. So I'm actually not even going to worry about the houses. I can tell you right out of the gate that's not a concern of mine. I really just want to get these big value shapes in there as quickly as I can. So without further ado, let's dive right into this. All right, folks. So for this painting, I'm going to be using a Williamsburg Cold Black and a titanium white. The Cold Black is a nice cool black. And as you can see here on the canvas panel, it's almost like a dark blue. It's a really, really nice paint. You can get a lot of variety with it. One of the things I'm doing here to start off is I'm taking a chip brush. This is just a cheap brush from Home Depot or local hardware store. I believe it was $3. And I'm using quite a bit of Gamsol to dilute the paint, almost to get a kind of watercolory feel to it. My reason for using such a big clunky brush right out of the gate here is that I really just kind of want to lay in some big value shapes to sort of figure out what composition I want to work with, and then lay in a few values to just lightly state where a few things are. I don't want to get bogged down with details, especially in a painting that's so quick. I want to get that composition nice, really right out of the gate, and this big brush just helps to lay in some of those dark darks, and then you can find the lights to see if that's going to be more what I want. The other thing that I use at this stage, again, this paint is very diluted. There's a lot of Gamsol in here and very little paint. But as you can see, the other thing I use here is a rag, and so I'm kind of carving away some of those chip brush marks to get a little bit more of a sort of set composition. One of the things that I'm sort of feeling with this image is I sort of want it to be a little bit heavier on the left-hand side, and so my hope is to sort of bring some of those trees, that little sort of tree line, bring that forward a little bit, so you really get a stronger sense of space. So you can see that I've left the left-hand side kind of coming forward a little bit. And then the right-hand side is a little bit more sort of brushy at the moment and not even filled in. There's a lot of the white of the canvas that's there. And so now I'm coming in with a brush, and immediately I'm trying to make these marks matter. With a painting that's so quick, this painting is going to be about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit more in total. I don't really want to second guess myself. I don't want to waste my time second guessing myself, because I think that is that's easy to do, and that really, really slows you down, I think. I'm okay with this being a study. I'm okay with this not turning out perfect. What I want to do is just get my thoughts out as quickly as I can, and then I can assess how effective they are. And what I mean by that is that afterwards I can assess how strong the painting is, and if I want to change anything, or if I want to work with this composition further, if I want to work with this subject further. But for the purpose of this value study, I think it's hugely helpful to keep moving forward. One of the things you'll see me doing right out of the gate here is I'm switching up my tools quite a bit. I've used a straight edge there. I've got a brush. I've used that chip brush. I've used a rag. And already you can see that I'm starting to find a pretty wide variety of mark. And I think that's always a goal of mine. I think that's always really important when you are creating painting, that you not sort of get used to the same type of mark or the same mark over and over again. That you sort of find those new marks. You can see that's a taping knife there to get some straight edges. And I'm not really looking too closely at the nitty-gritty details. I'm still looking at big shapes. I like that little patch of snow kind of through the trees. There's a few sort of tree lines back there, and I like those sort of peekaboo moments where you get to see that little bit. So I wanted to lay that in right away so that I could really see quickly what it was that I wanted to paint, and if that was going to work in this. So you can sort of see that moment close to the center of the canvas there. I should note that this is a canvas panel, a homemade canvas panel. So it's canvas mounted to MDF and gessoed and then primed again with oil primer, which is a really nice surface to work on. One of the things about this painting is that it is a value study, but I'm using a lot of the value shifts to happen in the dilution of the black paint. I'm not mixing a ton just for this painting in particular. And what I mean by that is I'm using a lot of sort of straight black and a lot of straight white and letting them sort of mix a little bit to sort of find that full range of value scale, but I don't have everything mixed on my palette at this time. Partly that's just the scene that I'm looking at today. I think it's a very, kind of, there aren't a whole lot of values, but I'm sort of finding that value range within the dilution of the paint. So this painting will have a lot of sort of thick moments and then a lot of really thin moments as well. I think that combined with the variety of mark that I was talking about earlier creates nice feel to the painting, one that's really, really important to me, where you can see thin paint, you can see thick paint, you can see brush marks, a little bit more constructed and not so flat, I think. You can see a few moments ago I went in there with the chip brush and then with the rag again, not wanting these brushy moments to sort of take over the painting. This is me kind of playing with those mountains in the background there. Laid them in with a sort of a mixed gray and then wiped it out, and trying to really get those to sort of fall back in space. And there's that tree line that sort of sits in front of the mountains. So there's sort of some really nice construction that's happening through there that I'm really excited about. But one of the things I'm noticing at this point is that mountain is too, it's too noticeable. It's in the center. It's this sort of perfect dome. It's got that dark mark up to the top left of it that I think probably was just a mistake. So one of the things that I'm doing here is I'm just getting rid of that line. I'm taking my palette knife and I'm just sort of scraping out the cleanliness of that line. That drags down some of the paint that's in the sky into some of this section that's in the mountain. And you sort of lose that line there. And when you lose that line, you get the sense that something is still back there, but you're not sort of overstating that it's this perfect mountain shape. Again, like the trees, I recognize that you can see it, especially when you look at the photo. But it's really not that kind of piece where you're trying to get every nitty-gritty detail. You're really just trying to get the feel of it as best you can in the time that you have. Again, I'm working on that peekaboo moment now. I'm making sure that sort of feels interesting. It's a little too straight on the top and bottom right now, so I know that that's something that I need to fix. But I'm just trying to think about the sort of composition of that and trying to get my eye to sort of move back in space. That can be done with subtle details. I'm just sort of trying to play around with that first tree line there and making sure that that's not so perfect and or straight. You can see even in the photo that there's some variation in there, and it can be, we can kind of make those moments straight just out of, that's what the hand wants to do when you're sort of dragging it across to the edge of the canvas, just to sort of straighten it out. But I think it's important to add a little variety into places like that, even if it's very, very subtle. One of the things I'm not also messing with right now that I'm not feeling is sort of the space behind the trees. I went into the trees so quickly, and that space behind there became pretty ambiguous, which I'm okay with. It does not have to be perfectly stated, or so clearly stated, I should say. But I added a little bit of variety back there to sort of clean up the space that's sort of falling behind the trees. One of the things you can see, there's that bright white moment to the left side of the leftmost tree, and I'll play with that in just a moment. I was feeling like the sky was a little bit flat, a little bit boring, and so this is me just kind of playing with it a little bit, trying to find some texture in there with the rag, and then coming back in with some clean white paint to sort of find some shapes that are in the sky to hopefully show, get a feel that sky is sort of moving back in space a little bit as well. And again, that's just some subtle variety. That's nothing too specific. And I think specificity is a good thing to bring up. This is not something where I'm, again, looking at the sort of nitty-gritty details of everything, of sort of what it has to be. I think I'm trying to move quickly and then have a few effective details. You can see here I'm sort of carving out some of that. As I stated before, those lines were so straight, and so I'm carving out some of that to make that feel a little bit more realistic and show a little bit more variation in the frontmost sort of tree line, where the trees almost sort of turn into bushes there, and you can see above them. Because I have gloves on here, I'm able to sort of use my finger as well, which I think can be effective, especially if you're, what I'm doing there is literally just trying to smudge something out, just trying to make it not so perfect, not so clean. You can trust your fingers and use that effectively. And I think the spaces are actually starting to come together pretty well. I like sort of how I'm moving through everything. I'm going to go back into these trees here just a little bit to just clarify a few things. Again, as I was doing them for the first time around, I was purposely pulling back, and what I'm doing here is really, again, not trying to go too far, not trying to say too much. Again, that white or that light moment next to that tree, when I put that light moment, when I carry it on to the other side of that tree, it really pushes that space back and then pushes the tree forward as well to have that light on either side of that tree. Again, really subtle moment, and that's sort of what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about detail. And at this point here, I'm going to pull back and take a quick look, and there's a few subtle things I want to correct, but it's the nature of this painting is to not overwork it. So I'm just adding a few other moments in the front there because I really don't want that to fall by the wayside. I want a few more things to sort of grab onto there for the viewer, but nothing too specific. And at this point, this painting is done. And when I say done, I mean I'm putting it away. And if it sits on the studio floor and calls me back, then maybe I'll do a larger painting of it, do something with color, go back into it, any number of those things. But for this exercise today, I'm excited to call this one complete. So let's take a look at the final image here, just so you can clearly see what I'm looking at. So one of the things I was going for here is a variety of mark. I didn't want to have the same thing repeated over and over again. I wanted to have some thick paint, some thin paint, some really sort of delicate marks, and then some really brushy, looser marks as well. In addition to that, I wanted to be able to move through the space as much as possible through those variations in value. So I wanted that space in the front, sort of a middle space, and then you could tell sort of the mountain, sort of undefined space almost in the background. And so those were my goals with completing this demo. Again, this was about 15 minutes, so a really, really quick study. So in that regard, I hope this was both enjoyable and helpful to watch. Thank you so much.